Hey guys, it's Audra. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday so far. This week, we're going to be focusing on obedience. So today I want to talk to you about the blessings that come from obedience. And we're going to spend this week kind of talking about and determining how we can be obedient to God. So when it comes to doing our Bible study and doing our prayer, one thing you don't want to do is become just a hearer of the word instead of a doer. James talks about that where he says, don't be just hearers of the word and not doers, because when you are just listening to the word and you're not actually putting it into practice and you're not obedient to what God is telling you, you are deceiving yourself. So when it comes to obedience, these are some of the blessings that are going to stem from us being doers of the word. And when we hear God speak something to us, when we apply it to our lives and we're diligent to work that out, there's definitely blessings that are going to stem from that. So the first blessing that's going to come from being obedient is when you're obedient to God's word, you always know the right thing to do. And it may not always be what you want to do. It may not always be the fun thing to do, but you can always rest assured that it's the right thing to do. So for that, I want you guys to think about Psalms 32:8, where it says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye upon you. And I've had, something similar like that happen to me in my own life, where I've had different opportunities come up that I've really wanted to take advantage of. But when I went back and I looked at God's word, the opportunity that was in front of me didn't line up with what God's word was, which was, be a good steward. And so I had to decline some things. And so even though it wasn't what I wanted to do, I didn't want to say no to the opportunity, I knew it was the right thing to do because my decision was based on what God's word said. The second blessing that's going to come from obedience is that obedience always leads to opportunity and more blessing. So if you think about Peter in Luke 5, where they've been out fishing all night and they hadn't caught anything, and then Jesus comes to them and he says, go ahead and let down your nets. And Peter tells him, Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing, but I will do as you say and I will let down the nets. And because they were obedient to Jesus's word, they went back out into the waters that they had fished all night, and not only did they catch something, they caught an enormous load of fish. They caught even more fish than they would have ever done fishing all day on their own. Because when Jesus speaks and he tells us something and we're obedient to that word, that's when we can walk in blessing and opportunity that was not there otherwise. So being obedient will lead to blessing and opportunity. The last thing is that obedience also leads to a greater understanding of God's word. So in Mark 4:24, Jesus says, consider carefully what you hear. And with the measure that you use, it will be measured to you and even more. So as we're obedient to God's word and we are diligent in studying it and applying it to our lives, God will start to open up his word and we will be able to understand more and grow in even deeper in our spiritual knowledge and understanding. So sometimes when you're having trouble studying the Bible and you feel like you're not getting a lot out of it, go back to the last thing that God told you to do. Go back to the last point that he made to you and see, am I obedient in that? And if you're finding that you have not been obedient in the things that he has already spoken to you, that could be the reason for your block now, is because he's already told you several things. You weren't obedient, and so now your understanding of spiritual things is limited. So definitely look into that. So when it comes to being obedient, I know that can be a hard thing sometimes to know exactly how do I do that. And that's what we're going to spend most of this week looking at. So one of the first things you want to do when it comes to being obedient to God's word is you want to ask for help. God doesn't ever just say, okay, do these things and expect us to do it in our own power. We don't have any power to do spiritual things in and of ourselves, but God has given us his power. He's given us his blessing. He's given us his spirit. So when it comes to being obedient to God, the first thing that we want to do is to ask him for help, and he's always going to provide that for us. The second thing that you want to look at as I scroll down in my notes here is to stay in the word. As we read God's word, he is going to be revealing truth to us. So if we want to be obedient, we want to know, what am I being obedient to? That's going to come from your personal quiet time or your personal Bible study. So the second thing you want to do is stay in the word. The third thing you want to do is choose. We have to make the choice to be obedient to God's word, because Spiritual wisdom and earthly wisdom are two different things. So there's always going to be times and seasons and situations that come up where you have to choose between what God's word says is right and true and what natural human wisdom says is right and true. And you have to make the choice between the two, and you want to make sure that you're following what God's word says in that situation. The next thing that you're going to want to do is resolve, because even though you've made the choice to follow God's word, it is a continual decision. You don't just decide one day, I'm going to be obedient. You're going to be making that choice over and over again. So you want to resolve yourself to say, okay, this is the way that God has told me to go. No matter what the situation looks like, not only have I chosen to follow his word, I am resolved to continue down this path, no matter how difficult it may be, or no matter how I may not understand exactly what God is working in me and through me in the situation. I'm resolved to follow his word. And then the last thing that you want to focus on is do not despise correction. As you go down this path of following after Christ and learning to become more like him, God is going to be correcting us because he's a loving father. And any loving parent, they're always going to correct their children because what they're trying to do is to help them to mature, to help them to grow, to help them to make wise decisions. And sometimes that's going to take correction. So there you have it, guys. That is kind of the theme for this week. That's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be drilling deep into some of those things that I've listed, the different verses, to give you guys an opportunity to reflect on them and really understand how important obedience is in our walk. So tomorrow, we're really going to talk about how obedience is incredibly important when it comes to fulfilling the call that God has on your life. Until next time, guys, stay blessed.